Hello YouTube. I want to talk to you about something very interesting that I have in my notes. I've been collecting on a continuous basis, basically, recollections of Russian and Soviet sailors who had sailed throughout the world on different ships and exchanged opinions on certain forums that they have set up. And it's very interesting because you find out stories about UFOs and USOs that they had observed, and most of them are very keen observers. They know what they see in the sky or underwater. But it's very interesting to hear what they say and how they say it, of course. So I put together some notes, recollections that I found, and I'll translate it as I go along and read from my notes, and I'll try to retain the slang that they used and the language, because it's very interesting. Anything connected with USOs, unidentified submersible objects, is very interesting to me. As you know, I have a book out. It's now in 4 languages, and I'm very glad about it. I'd like to see it published in more languages and build bridges, let people know what's going on. So let me begin in July of 2009, and somebody whose nickname is Novaship, who was an electrician mechanic, remembers the night watch from 12 to 4, and he says that he was doing the watch with a sailor, and then all of a sudden we see something unreal, gigantic, flying over us, about the size of a football field, because we were sailing westward, but this thing moved from south to the north, right straight over us. I would say about 500 meters over us, and that's how it flew by. Too bad I didn't have a photo camera with me, but I made some drawings. It looks like the Napoleon hat, and each end of it had a light, and inside was a hole. You could see the stars. So at first I thought, maybe this is a training of a new aircraft, probably. And then I understood, there are no airplanes like this. It flew away, so we sit down, we drink tea, we talk to each other, and then all of a sudden, again, the same thing. From the same side, but higher, about a kilometer over us. Well, while I open my mouth in bewilderment, so I stand there with my binocular. The sailor, he calls the captain. It's scary. I'm thinking, what the hell? Maybe the foreigners will take me a prisoner. Then the captain came by, looked at this thing, mumbled something, and that was it. The next report I have from January 2011. I have a number of them from that year. And this was from a first mate. And he says that experienced sailors, those who worked on fishing ships, said that, or told that, in the South Atlantic, by the South Georgia Islands, they often encountered underwater light, the diameter about a mile, and this light would disappear suddenly. These stories were told to me by people who don't know each other. Now, myself, I was sailing in the Caribbean islands, and a few times on the radar at night, I would see an object next to my ship, which was not visible by eyes, so to say, but you could see it on the radar. And it was not something that prevented radar working. Also, one time in the Caribbean islands, we met a phantom ship. It was moving without any lights at the speed of about 8 knots, and the automatic information system did not register it, and the length of the object was about 100 meters. You could only see it on the radar. By the way, just Paul Stonehill wants to add, myself, that I have quite a lot about South Georgia Island, and I'm sure the British are aware of what's going on in those waters. They just don't like to talk about it. But the Soviets, they had some secret missions in the area, That was before the fishing ships came by. So there's something going on down below. So January 2011, and somebody named Boris says that in 1979, it was at the end of August, about 19 hours, Karsk Sea. So there was this caravan going eastward, and for 20 minutes all the ships in the caravan observed UFO, and the communications between them was cut at the time. The object was flying over the ships, and it was basically using a ray of light of strange striking white color and very compact. So because we were the last in the caravan, it hovered over us, and the visibility was great. We tried to look at the binocular, but just a black spot, that's what we saw with the ray that was emitted. No noise, absolutely. Now, the distance was hard to determine, but radar did not register it, so I think the distance was quite big. After finishing unknown project to us, this object at a great speed disappeared behind the horizon towards the northern pole. And at that time, radio communications started from all 13 ships. So there were a lot of witnesses. The second time I saw, that was in the Guinea Strait, and this was at dawn, and the weather was ideal. This was in 1994, and the object, it flew out from under the water. Now the sailor who was at the watch and myself, we didn't feel right, so we didn't want to tell anybody. The object was not too big in size wise, and it was shining this white greenish color. But that's it. I did not see anything else. And then we're back in January 2011, and somebody named Maxim says that 3 years in the Arctic, I saw 3 times, and the 2 times other ships observed it too. And you know what? From the ships Vashod and Chorny, they even shot at it, tracer bullets, and it was over us at the distance of 200-250 meters. Now in the Arctic, north to the island of Dixon, it was December of 1991. I saw this bright red color about 2.5 miles from the steamship, and at that time there was nobody else in the area practically, and this object, it was shining for about an hour and a half, and then it disappeared. I remember it. Maybe somebody still, maybe at that time somebody needed help. And the next object, the next report comes from also January 2011, and somebody whose nickname is Moby Dick. And that's what, now this report is very interesting. He says, well, no, in December of 1991, I was in the Baltics, Yamala station, and what I saw was a green parachute rocket at night in the winter, right in the middle of the Karsk Sea, where it's not supposed to be. We changed our itinerary and tried to find it, but we didn't find anyone or anything. There was another case when the watch assistant to the captain called out the captain to the bridge to say that there was a nuclear explosion on Novaya Zemlya. But in reality it was the sun and the clouds on the horizon that made something that appeared very much like the nuclear mushroom and explosion. And there was another case when we reacted to the red rocket, and actually a helicopter was sent there. This was some traveler on an ore boat, Pella. He got as far as to the Taimyr Peninsula, but apparently and unfortunately his travels ended well in the Arctic, and thinking that he can do more, he started shooting again. And after that, nobody ever saw or heard from him again. Now let's get to somebody named Rover from January 2011, his report. And he's talking about the Red Sea. The night the moon is out, stars are out, visibility is great. You can see crap underwater if you want to. Waters are still, basically no traffic. So we went from Jeddah towards Aqaba. That's I'm saying so people don't think that we were drinking some alcohol, he says. Now on the radar you see clear mark ahead to the right, and the load or the line of relative distance is missing. So the target is moving next to us, parallel course, same speed. Visually we cannot see the target. After the moment this line of relative distance load again shows it. So I go to the right 20 degrees, the load doesn't change. I do another turn 30 degrees and start sending sound and light signals. So the captain runs to the bridge, he looks at the situation and has he gives the starboard command. Closest point of approach is 0, distance 3 cables. So we are somewhat worried, and then the target disappears from radar. All this time we could not visually determine what was that target. Somebody named VK, January 2011. During the Soviet times, I worked on one of the big roller, that's the roll-on or roll-off vessels. And the whole crew, we observed something that was a circle of lights, gigantic, in the center of the Atlantic. So we wrote it down in the log. We put it down. January 2011, Caspio, who was a first mate, he says this: Mediterranean, end of June of this year, that would be probably 2000. About 1 at night, we see this radiant shining object. At first I thought it was a star. In a few minutes I look, my attention goes there, and I see that the object moves slowly and it increases somewhat in size. So I don't think it's a UFO, I don't believe it. So I think it's like an airplane that goes to land. I had a lot of thoughts at the same time. I observed how the object hovered at one spot. The distance was hard to determine, but I think the altitude was about 1 kilometer. Then the object flies at 45 degrees upward. This is not speed, this is super speed, super velocity. The object disappears in the night sky among stars. From what I see, I forgot how to breathe. All I can say for sure, this was an artificially made object. Finally, I saw them. This one is from a captain whose nickname is Mantula, and this is from March 2012. And he says, I was somewhat shy to register on this place here, but I can tell you that I personally saw such cases in the Mediterranean about 3 or 4 times in 1987 to 1988. One was in the region of island of Crete and then eastward towards Syria, closer to that area. About all of them in the same place, but different times of the year. At night I observed this dark object, which was a rhomboid in shape with 4 lights in the corners. It looked like an elongated cross. The sizes were big, hundreds of meters each side, but I can't tell you more. For sure, it was clear, starry night. The altitude was hard to determine, but I would say 2-3 kilometers approximately. That's what I would say. Radar did not register it. The object behaved strangely. He would hover, not moving at one place, or he would start moving at great speed, much higher velocity than the aircraft would have it. It moved chaotically forward, to the sides, and in the binoculars, when you look, it was hard to guess its configuration. But you could see it was a clear rhombus. I was sober, never take drugs. I have witnesses. The sailors from the watch and colleagues of the skipper, they looked their eyes out just like I did, but we couldn't find any coherent explanation. Another captain from March 2012, his nickname is Ford Wind. Well, I saw something similar in the spring of 1982 over the White Sea, but the object, it moved in the sky very slowly. And again, in March of the same year, 2012, PK, who is a chief mechanic, says that in 2005 and 2006, we sailed from the Strait of La Perouse towards the Soviet Strait along the shores of Japan. There was about 23 hours, so the captain calls me to the bridge. I come outside and say, what's going on? And he says, look. So I see something gigantic. It was shining spot over the water, which goes straight broadside and very, very quickly. So we stopped. We don't know what to do next. And it just went under the body of the ship and it disappeared in the Sea of Okhotsk. What it was, I really don't know. Now we go to November of 2014. A boatswain whose nickname is Stoker, WK. And he says, the story was like this. We are out in the open ocean, nobody around us. So I stand at this night watch, cemetery watch, so to say. All of a sudden, I see from the right on the horizon a bright star. It flies parallel to the horizon and flies very quickly. I show it to the second mate. The guy becomes interested too. We see that the object zigzags. In the binocular, I see this bright, shimmering egg. It crossed the course, and then it from the right to the left, practically over the line of the horizon. So we kind of think around, and we think that it had to be at great speed. 140 degrees of observation, it crossed in 40 seconds. Now, the second mate, he was a former professor, and he did calculations himself, and he showed me that it was fantastic speed. I trust him. He's old school, okay? So, and he knows how to calculate, and that's what he did. November 2014, somebody named Corvette, who was a woodworker, he says that he saw something very unusual in the year of 1973, in June, probably between 3rd and 7th of June. They were fishing with a friend, and all of a sudden they showed this fiery sphere. It was golden in color, it changed size, then it started briskly falling on us, and it turned into a ring. From the ball it became a ring, and this ring was of a size that covered the whole horizon. And then there were more rings, 4 or 5. I basically almost crapped in pants, and I put myself at the bottom of the boat. I was 9 years old, my friend was 13. Now I remember, and I think maybe there were like nuclear explosions in the outer space. June 2015, Star Fox, captain. And he says, you can laugh and not believe, but I saw, and I wasn't the only one. We were looking upwards, maybe 100 people or more. But this happened not in the sea, but in the city, in a clear, nice day. It was a round object, and it emitted a very bright greenish light, and it quickly moved in the sky. and it was no airplane, it was no helicopter. The object was in the field of vision for about 15-20 seconds, and after it disappeared behind the clouds. I'm telling you, I was completely sober, and many other people watched this with me. Now we go to September 2016, and somebody whose nickname is Framich and who is a junior mechanic says the following thing. Sailing from Panama to Europe, about somewhere around the Azore Islands. So after this night watch, we go to the bath, and then we come out, and we see that after that, over the deck, strange phenomena. About a mile from us, at a very high speed towards us, something flies. It showed itself with very bright light flashes with interval of a few seconds, and it was flying very quickly. So we called the bridge. The first mate also observed it, but the radar did not register anything. Most likely it was creation of human hands, but what technology, who knows? Or maybe the Martians. September 2016, somebody whose nickname is Meadows, and he's a skipper, and he says, in 2006 I saw something similar to your UFO. We were going from Canada to Houston, and on the Norfolk latitude, in the evening, the third mate called from the bridge to our rest area and says, guys, come out and take a look. Well, we thought maybe we see a floating base in the distance, because there were like three groups of lights, like the lights on masts. Now the third mate says the radar is empty, nothing there. So we start looking, and we see that the lights over the water, and not dots but spheres, yellow-orange spheres. All of them, all of a sudden, then they just shut down and again lit up along the whole horizon. There were 12 of them. They would hover, and then they would shut off the light at the same time. And then again, immediately they would make like groupings in pairs, something like a ladder, okay? And then they would start doing other groupings and form other formations. At the end, they just extended in one line, and one after another the lights went out. The weather was great, quiet, stars out, the sea was clear, like a mirror. All of the crew were on the deck. We were not afraid because of that. We don't know what it was, but because we're close to Norfolk, we're thinking maybe the military were doing something. So that's what our captain said first. This was the first version. Again, September 2016, Moon Rover, second mate. So, in brief, this was what happened. I'm going to the balcony to smoke. Locally it's like 21 hours. It's dark. The sky is dark black. I don't know. I just decided to look up, and I see something bright, like a celestial body, like a Jupiter in the summer. I don't understand. Where did it come from in the zenith? So I look at it at the altitude of about 50 degrees. It's the Baltics in the summer, and zenith. Seconds go by, and the planet starts shutting down. The light starts shutting down. He called it the planet. And then we just go full speed ahead, and then I see it again a little bit, and it disappears. It went towards the southeast. Now we will see what Kirill made. His nickname says that happened, and again, the report is dated 2016, but it doesn't mean that he saw it that year. This is when they put their recollections on the forums. So he says, we are sailing to Canada at that time, and I was just the third mate at the time, and the thing happened like this. This is like the middle of the Atlantic, about 2200 far away on the horizon from the left, towards at the course, we see this gigantic flame which comes from the water, about 3-4 minutes, and visually somewhere about 10 miles. It was a long time ago. I don't remember all of the details, but I remember that there were no ships in the area. It was quiet. The sea was empty. I don't know what happened. It all extinguished afterward. I still don't know what happened. Now, another report date from the same period where they put up their information, September 2006. This was from Rufat, who was a seaman. He says, this happened when I served in the army. I served in the Navy, in the shore systems of observations. It was on the Ribachi peninsula, and it was the post was called Vashod. Anyway, we see with a friend, we were doing our watch duty, so we go out to smoke a little bit, we look around, the visibility is great in the sea, you can see the lights on the ship ahead, and we see all of a sudden these gigantic circles, fiery circles, very big ones, and they're becoming bigger and bigger. So I used the radio to call the mid-sized Richard trawler. It's a ship which was leaving territorial waters, and I say, do you guys see anything over you? And he says, no, we didn't see anything. And all these jokes about that we smoked something that we were not supposed to, no. We didn't do things like that. And just to say that the Matovsky Strait is not too far away. And here is the last, from a different forum, here is the last observation. It was very interesting, and it was placed there in December of 2011. And here's what he says. This is the story from my life. I had this small factory in the area. It doesn't matter what and so forth, but people worked around the clock there. So here's what happened. The night shift, all of them together, they speak about a UFO which was hovering about 2 kilometers away from the factory. It was a yellow disc, and you could see that the 2 green lights going down at 40 degrees angle, and people saw it from the top floors of the buildings in this village too. The village was nearby, and then this gigantic stupid thing went to the shore of the Ladoga lake, and then it just disappeared towards the south. I know the people who work for me. They could not invent anything like that. So what was it? And that's the question that I'm going to leave you with. What was it? That's what the sailors want to know too. Russian sailors. And I always get their stories any way possible. I speak with them. I read their recollections on their forums and more. And I'll bring it to you too, because it's very interesting. Yeah, let's say that most what they had seen were military tests, but in the middle of Atlantic, objects that move at incredible speeds. So think about it, and if you can help support my research, I'd appreciate it. You can see the Patreon link in the description to this video, and I promise I'll bring you more interesting videos. Thank you, YouTube. Thank you, people who watch my videos and support me and give some part of their lives to see what I tell them. Thank you.